So here we have a Lochinvar. This is a WHN 55 fire tube boiler. It's piped pretty much to what the manual says. There's a 4-in-1 spiral vent which becomes either closely spaced T's or low loss header. Zones with circulation pumps. If I had to do this over, I would use a system circulator and zone valves, but I kind of copied what was here before, so that's the only thing I would do differently on this setup here. Control is pretty intuitive. You can see right now it's running on 20% because I've got it tweaked pretty good to where it'll run constantly when it's calling for heat. One thing you don't want to do with condensing boilers is short cycle them over and over again and wear out the electronic components and stuff like that. So if you have a lot of small zones that can't extract enough heat out of the water, it's going to cycle on and off over and over again as the set point gets reached. So this knob, you can go, these are the homeowner screens. System 116 is in parentheses, that's what it's calling for. That's what it's at now. The system sensor is in the loop on the left side of the spiral vent. The outlet sensor is what the boiler is producing, and it's saying it's 46 degrees outside. The sensor is about 5 degrees off, but it doesn't matter because you're scaling it on the other table anyway. So here you've got inlet temperature of the incoming water, outlet temperature of the outgoing water, delta T, which is the difference between the two, and then the flue temperature, which should roughly equal the inlet temperature. If there's a big difference there, the heat exchanger might be getting dirty or clogged. When you're running the low temperatures, you're not really going to get a 20-degree delta. I think I've gotten 16 to 18 when both zones are running and it's pretty cold outside. That's your flame current and fan speed. I thought there were more screens. Okay, so you got boiler pump is on, system pump is on. It's not hooked up, but it would be on. And if you were heating hot water, there's a separate circuit for the domestic hot water pump for an indirect heater or anything else, but I'm not using that because I have a separate water heater. Flame voltage, system pump output or input. So this, they're not really like an economical, but you can control the speed of the boiler pump with a 0 to 10 volt. I haven't gotten into that because it's not worth it for my application. So here you're going to have, the last screen is run hours, that's how long the boilers run, and cycles, that's how many times it's turned on and off. So I believe we have 18,700 hours of runtime and 4,300 cycles. I believe that works out to over 4 hours is the average burn time, which is, this is fin 2 baseboard, so I think that's pretty good. If you had a radiant floor or big cast iron heaters, you'd get a longer run, and which is better for a condensing boiler. Fin tube is pretty much the last application you'd want it on. The last 10 faults, this boiler has only had one fault on me, and it's because they were working on the gas line outside and the pressure dropped. It was running fine at about 3.5 inches, but they finally had to cut it off to fix the valve. The date's not right, I never said it. So then when you go in here, it's been a while since I did this. Oh, you gotta hold the menu button. What the hell am I doing wrong? You don't want to shut it down. All right, so you hold the menu down, I believe 5 seconds, and it asks for a password. It's in the installation manual. It's 5309. You turn the knob and push it. Save. Now you're in your settings, general settings, time and date, software version, temperature unit. I don't remember what that one was. I believe if I don't have any offsets. I think that's if you want to offset the entire table. It's been a while. Temperature settings. SH1 set point. I have 160 as the high. Minimum set point is 32. I don't remember what I did for all this stuff. Well, I believe these are the maximum that the homeowner, without going into this menu, can override it to. Better remember this stuff, otherwise this video is going to be useless. Yeah, we don't need to reset those functions. Freeze pump on. It'll run the boiler if it reaches 45 degrees. It'll run the boiler if it reaches 37 degrees. That happened once when I filled the system. It was very cold outside. Domestic hot water settings. Set point for the boiler. Tank set point. Tank set point differential. And that's an offset if you wanted. I never really looked into that. I believe that's the maximum time it'll run. I never went in there, so I don't really know much about that. This is the most important one, outdoor reset. So when you get a table, my outdoor load, my design degree days is 7 for my location. So you design the system to heat the house at 7 degrees Fahrenheit. And then outdoor high. Outdoor one high. I don't remember what the high was, but anyway, so maybe that's the high end of the scale. So at 32 degrees outside, the water is going to be 116 degrees going out of the boiler. When it's 70 degree outside, the water coming out of the boiler will be 146 degrees. So we're not running 180 degree because then this thing will never condense and you might as well have bought a cast iron boiler. So, and then the 32 degrees of the cap, so it'll never go below 116 degrees for the water temperature, which I've noticed the fin tube, it doesn't really like being under that anyway. So, and this will ensure that the boiler runs. So you can run two different resets, or three different schemes. So you'll see it's on scheme 1 or reset 1. If I go to the next one, load 2, I have 7 and 32, 148 and 124, because if you notice I had 2 taco SR relays, because like I said, if I had done this again, I would have done zone valves, but there's no way to get it to use 2 different heating resets without different valves. So it's going to prioritize whichever one is hotter. So right now, zone 1 is a bigger zone and it runs cooler. So these are the 2 bedrooms on this zone. So there wasn't enough fin tube to extract all the heat so the boiler would cycle. So what I did was I tied it into the other zone, and then eventually I brought some scrap heaters and laid some underneath the bathroom floor for like a cheap radiant floor heating, and it actually brought this zone up enough to where it would cycle. So I'm using the 2. You could do a third one, like if you had a radiant floor, it would run on setting 1, and then if you had fin tube, it would have to run on another setting, because you know a radiant floor might be 80 or 90 degree water, and these don't really condense until about 130. So hopefully that sort of made sense. Anti-cycling, this is another big one. Anti-cycling time, 10 minutes. So you can set this from 0 to 10 minutes. It'll block the boiler from turning back on. So let's say you grossly oversize this thing at like 300,000 BTUs, and it only ran for a minute before shutting off. You can delay it from starting up for 10 minutes. The ramp delay, if it's enabled, you have settings for ramp. You have 10 steps, and you can set the delay from 0 to 10 minutes. So step 1, these numbers I put in there, I could have, I don't know why they say like 6:30 and 7, who knows. But anyway, so for the first 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes, the boiler will run a maximum of 40%. Then for an additional 6.5 minutes, 45%. An additional 7 minutes, 45%, 50%, 70%, 6. All right, so there's 6 ramp settings. This last setting, you'll notice it's on 70, so that limits the boiler to 70%. So this boiler is 55,000 BTUs. The house is about 1,400 square feet. The most I've ever probably used is about 30 to 35,000 BTUs. That was judging by the coldest year I've ever had, using a fuel use calculation. So the boiler never runs over 70% because step 6 is blocking it from doing that. Control modes. So if you had a building management system, you could control this, and then the Modbus, there's a Connex board you can log in remotely, but it's like $650. I don't really need that. Circulation pumps, you can delay. I believe that's the delay after it stops running. I never really mess with those. You can set constant system circulation. I believe it'll exercise the pumps every day so they don't seize up on you. The taco controllers do that. Mine aren't wired into the boiler except for the boiler pump. I have a Viridian The boiler pump is the 1816. I have it set to the minimum speed. I've never had an issue with it. If you're going to go with the condensing boiler, you might as well get the ECM pumps. Bilging management system, service notification. You could tell it who to call, when to call, frequency, things like that. It'll display a number every year with a yellow or orange screen. The screen will be red if there's a fault. So that's basically it. My experience with this is mostly for tuning. Some of the settings I don't use or never really looked into. But the main reason is you want to try not to cycle it repeatedly. You know, I've read that people have come across boilers with 70,000 cycles. That's going to wear out the electronics. It's not like a bang bang cold start boiler. You don't really want to use a Nest or any of those fancy thermostats or huge setbacks, because the water temperature is so low it takes a while to respond. So the living room is set to 68 degrees constantly, and then the bedrooms I use a 2-degree setback at night. The heat really is nice because it's a constant flow, so 4 hours of constantly low temperature and low heat coming out of the emitters. So it works pretty good, and you get a constant nice flow of heat instead of a rapid, like a quick hot blast from the heater and then it shuts off until the thermostat comes back on. So that's about it. So this is the Viridian circulator here. These are normally what I'll do if I ever have to do another one is put one of these on the system log and then use zone valves. And I wouldn't put this, I would put this 1816, which is a professional or a proportional pressure mode. So as zones turn on and off, it'll adjust its flow. So originally I had this 503 running everything, but I added another one because it allows you to run 2 different zones, because there's 3 different thermostat settings on the boiler. So if so you have heat 1, heat 2, and that would be heat 3. Your tank thermostat would be here. This is for how you control a 0 to 10 volt boiler pump. Tank's an outdoor sensor. That's the system sensor. If you don't want to install this and not use the outdoor sensor, it's like that would be very wasteful of spending all the money on the boiler and then running at 180 degrees. Alarm contacts, I believe, or a louver proving switch. You could hook up like an outdoor louver or even the condensation pump. So if your condensation pump were to trip out and fail, it would prevent this from running. But I'd rather have a little bit of water on the floor than potentially the house freezing. But I should have a low water cutoff, but I don't because there's boiler sensors. That's what this is for. Eventually, when I stop being lazy, I probably shouldn't have done the pressure relief that way, but one day I'll fix it. But for right now, it's fine. And CPVC for the exhaust, PVC for the intake. If you're wondering why the elbow looks like that, they do have a minimum length for the exhaust, because sometimes these can foghorn if the exhaust is too low or if it's a little too lean. But for now, that's about it. And it did leave the installer menu because we left it for a while. So that's about it. So you definitely want your cycle run hours to be over your heating cycles. Hopefully this video helps you learn to tune your Knight boiler. A lot of these are whether it's a KBN or the new this is only 5-to-1 turn down, meaning the burner will run at 1/5. Now they have 10-to-1. That was before that. I got this before those came out. So those are even better because you can run a smaller zone on them. So yeah, this house originally had a 140,000 BTU boiler. I replaced it with this 50,000 BTU boiler, or 55,000 because it's the smallest one. And even this is limited to 70%. And I've never had the house not meet whatever temperature I wanted. You can also run a boost. I don't, but if it does not reach the set point in a certain amount of time, it'll bump the water temperature up. I never looked into it because I never had to do that. But if you wanted the ability to boost your system, you can do that. You can also use an unused temperature, and from the flick of a switch you can add a boost. So when you flip the switch, it'll boost the temperature temporarily. But I never had to look into that. So hopefully this video was helpful. And we'll see.